What if the Sage of Six Paths decided to punish Madara by sending him to another world? What if Madara takes in a boy who just lost his parents? What if he transplants white Zetsu cells and more into this boy? Turns out the boy's name is Issei, also Madara trains the boy to become like him. Find out how Madara has changed fate, also rated M for Madara. Chapter 1. Prologue. Deep within the basement of a house, a young boy no older than 6 years old now violently thrashed on the floor. His body was in immense pain from the transformation that was occurring within him. For his part he had agreed to it, but he was still a child and had no idea as to what he was agreeing to. A man with massive long spiked up black hair, wearing red armor now looked down at him. I see, so that is how it is, the flow of chakra is seen by your body as an alien substance and thus rejects it. The chakra as he had called it had been injected into the body of the boy to be more precise his bloodstream due to him lacking any natural flow of chakra. The immune system of the boy was now trying to repel the foreign matter in a vain attempt to keep it from spreading to the whole body. To ease the pain the boy felt, the man now bent down and with a swift and hard tap to the thrashing boy, he knocked the child out good. At least now I will have to do a lot of work in order for him to be of any use to me. Now placing the child back upon the surgical table he now activated his red glowing eyes known to him as the Sharingan so he could observe what the chakra was now doing to the boy. The red demon-like eyes were a trait solely of his clan, but his eyes were a lot more powerful than most. After all, he was Uchiha Madara, the first son of Uchiha Tajima. He had brought the shinobi world to its knees, he had bested the 5 cage, he had absorbed the power of the 10 tails and was able to control it. He also did get taken out in one shot by Black Zetsu and had been manipulated the entire time from his start of darkness. To think that over the course of it all, I had just been a puppet. Yeah, he was not happy about the last part by the way, if he could he would go back and defeat Kagaya, even if it was the last thing he'd ever do. But no, the Sage of Six Paths sent him to this world as penance for what he had done. Did he regret all that he had done? The answer to that was clearly no, for now he was using a young boy as an experiment. Did he regret some of what he had done? Yes, for rather than just disposing of this boy he now did what he had to in order to save him. Now as he managed to conjure up white Zetsu cells, he began to replace parts of the boy's flesh with it. As he did this he was able to see that the chakra in the boy began to stabilize for a limited use of the word. I see, so I will need to remove your natural flesh and give you flesh like this in order for you to even have the hope of using chakra. Now as he set to work on this, he saw something shine in the left arm of the boy. Now though he was curious about what it was or rather what was in this left arm. Madara chose to be cautious and now wove a sealing jutsu onto the arm. Due to nature of what he had just sealed not being chakra, Madara was unable to see what was in the seal he had just made. Though he could view it if he truly wished to, he decided to leave that to a later date. For now he went back to changing part of the boy's body as well as now injecting some of his own blood into the boy. I guess one can now say that you truly are of my blood now boy, if you don't survive, it will be an insult to me and proof you were not worthy. Now as he finished making the final modifications to the boy he sat down and waited for seemed to be an eternity. Well, not for him. His patience was much longer than a few hours or days or even years. In fact, Madara knew better than most to wait for the perfect time to strike. Even if that perfect time is somewhat 50 or 60 years down the track. The body did inhale and exhale, but so far that was all it had done, after he had knocked it out. The boy had not made any other noise, perhaps the strain was too much for the fragile frame to take. Why are humans of this world so mundane and so weak? Why is that the case? It was a good question. With no chakra, how did these humans fight? How did they survive? How did they compete against one another? Madara had not been in this world for long, but he knew the longer he was here the less he liked it. Sure, he had his chakra, his power, his jutsu, his eyes and his Sharingan, but what was the point of it? The people here, they were mundane, not to bring up that almost worthless. No, this was not all of it. The left arm of the boy, it proved to him that there was more out there, he could feel it. But in the middle of his dark brooding as it were, he heard a noise, a cough from the boy on the surgical table in front of him. Following it came a gasp as the boy's eyes shot open, he wanted to scream but found that he could not. As the boy now looked around in horror, he saw the man that had done all of this to him. Madara in turn just said, so you survived, good for you, but the real thing starts now. The boy could only look up in the armored man in front of him, unable to do anything but just stare at the man. The man looked at him and asked, are you afraid? The boy in reply to him could only nod and the man now gave a rather wicked smile as he said, good, it is a start, but after I am done with you, you will know not to let that fear harm your cause. The boy now tried to stand up and get off the table, but found that most of his body was a little bit too numb as well as felt rather weak. Madara looked at him and now said, oh, your body, I had to make a few adjustments to it in order to keep you alive. You'll be able to walk again in a week or so when your mind and body return to sync. Most of what Madara had said to the boy went right over his head. No shit, the kid was what, 7 years old at best. But the next thing that Madara said to him, the boy was able to understand at least for a very limited definition of the word. My blood now flows through your veins, child. I have made you what you are and I will shape you for the future, for you are mine now until you die. It would be a new experience for both of them. The boy would grow and learn what it means to be an Uchiha. While Madara would in turn have to grow and learn how to be a father, a thing that he had never done before. But if Hashirama was able to do it, it should not be that hard. But the main thing that was now on the mind of Uchiha Madara was what he now said aloud for no real reason. How can I get this boy to have Sharingan? It was a good question but one for another time as the kid now looked up at him and said, I am your child now. In reply to that Madara corrected the boy by saying, no, and you never truly can be my child, for that is impossible, but you are mine, you will be my shinobi, so tell me boy, what is your name? He had heard the boy's name already. The boy had been called Hyodo Issei. He had found the boy not long after he had entered this world. In fact, the boy had found him, or rather the boy's parents had, when they crashed the thing called a car close to by him. No, that was not it. What was it was a heat truck had swerved not to hit him, while he stood in the middle of a road. That truck had hit and killed the parents of this boy a year ago. Madara decided to take the boy in due to him not having any other place to go. The boy had a house in which he could live, and in turn he would provide for the boy. The boy now said, my name is Hyodo Issei. Madara bluntly now stated to the boy, try again. Not being able to perceive what Madara was saying, Issei now said back to him, I don't understand. My name is Issei Hyodo. My parents, they died. You took me in. It was at this point Madara cut him off by asking, what is my name? There was a pause now before the boy looked up at Madara and said, Madara, Uchiha Madara. Madara gave a nod and then said, if that is so, what is your name? Issei now seemed to get it as he now said, my name is whatever you desire it to be. Madara gave a smile as he approved, good, with that out of the way, let us get started on your training, shall we? 10 years later. It had been 10 years since that day. Madara had mercifully allowed him to keep the name Issei, but not his last name. One of them involved being thrown into another universe to try to amend some of the issues that Madara caused. Needless to say, nothing went right and some things were unchangeable and other things were better as they were. Though Issei had to admit, defeating a guy who took out Madara did feel rather satisfying in the sense that this guy took out Madara with a single hit. He had been in that world on and off for months at a time to weeks, days, and even for only a few hours. But now after 10 years he had finally returned to report to Madara, and Madara had finally said, all that was required to be done has been done. Part of Issei felt relieved he did not have to travel to another world and continue to try to clean up what Madara in that time had done. But part of him was sad. He did make friends in that world and he did make some enemies as well. Some of them died, others lived on despite what he had tried to do, some things he had been unable to change. His right eye itched slightly at the memory of a fallen friend, and Issei had to close it and then reopened it in order to get that feeling to pass. But that no longer was a priority for Issei. Madara had not been sitting around with his thumb up his ass. Over the years he had built up a private contractor when it came to certain things. Not long after he had returned, Madara had handed over a contract as it were to him to complete. It was a simple find and kill scenario, and if able recover a body as well. Someone had kidnapped people. If they were dead or not, no one knew, but the official authorities had made no headway on the case so far, and it was up to the 6th victim. How an old couple were able to get news of Madara and what he did for work was not really something Issei wanted to go into. He knew there had to be a way that they did, but everything happened for a reason, so in turn he was meant to be here on this night. Crow clones were wonderful things, especially when used correctly. They could cover ground and spy out a vaster area than wood clones. Madara himself would never be convinced of that, since he preferred the wood clones, which Issei did on occasion point out were not truly Madara's to be proud of. Him saying that usually did not go down well with Madara, so he often thought it instead. Through his use of crow clones, Issei had been able to get a good view of the entire area, and his own intellect allowed him to draw conclusions about the very loose string of disappearances. He had no idea as to why the police had been unable to get this far, but he had an estimated area to where this serial killer was. Issei would prefer that this be the actual serial killer who had killed the daughter of the old couple was. In his mind the possibility of that was just as likely that it was not. But if this was not his target, he'd have done all this work for nothing, as it were. Whatever was in the nutjob's lair would not scare him. He had seen far worse than whatever was in there. After all, one does not partake in missions within the shinobi world and not see things that are disturbing. Approaching the abandoned warehouse tied to all of the killings that people overlooked, Issei wanted to err on the side of caution, sent a crow clone in first. Not through the front door but through the side entrance. He actually made sure that he was in a position to intercept any attempted escape by the guilty party. As the crow clone entered the building he could not resist saying, "Shall we begin?" Within the warehouse. It was not what Issei had expected, but what the crow clone observed was rather gruesome in its own way. The bodies were here, or rather what was left of them. The mangled remained meant to the eye. It would be impossible to identify the bodies on the spot. But that was not the thing that caught the Issei's attention. No, what caught his attention was the creature that could have once been human. Its eyes opened and looked at the crow clone up and down, seemingly unaware that this was in fact not the original. Looking the crow clone up and down, it began to laugh in a most unnatural way. Now looking on at him, it said, "Oh my, what have I here? A delicious morsel walking right into my home." It laughed a very unnatural laugh, and the crow clone stood perfectly still looking up at the creature, which in turn laughed once more. When it saw that the crow clone had not done a thing, it decided to say, "I see, so you are so struck with fear that you cannot do anything. A shame too. I would have liked to play with you a little bit." As soon as it finished speaking, it struck out in a very serpent-like way with its arm, but it struck only the empty floor as the flapping of wings and the callings of crows were heard as the crow clone took form behind the creature. Now Issei spoke through the crow clone, stating, "I am not sure what you are, but that doesn't matter. I am sure that you will die here." At this point he did not wish to draw out this fight, for it would not only damage the crime scene, but he had been requested by Madara to keep the ninjutsu to a minimum. The creature now looked into the crow clone's eyes as it turned around and said, "So you're not the run-of-the-mill human, but your tricks will not save you." The creature was now stuck just as it was about to make a move. The ability to move had been robbed of it. Instead, the creature had the sensation of some sort of stake or spike being driven through its limbs. This was the demonic illusion. Shackling stakes technique. The creature despite this was able to speak, though it struggled for every word. "What are you?" Issei, who had no obligation to answer that nor intent to, simply drew out a concealed kunai and proceeded to separate that creature's head from his neck. Now with the creature's head in hand he came in and had his crow clone pass him the head before letting the crow clone disperse. With head in hand he knew what to do with it, and now as his eyes flashed from the Sharingan to his Mangekyo Sharingan, Issei said the word, Amaterasu. Black flames appeared on the head just as Issei threw it up into the air. As the head slowly burned away he looked to the body and lamented, well, what am I going to do with you? It was really the first time he had seen something more than human in this world, and it was rather odd. At least in the shinobi world odd things made sense and everything had a place and a reason to exist. He could not say the same for this thing, whatever it was, but he now pulled out a scroll and moved over to where the body of the creature was. Madara would need to see this, and he needed a way to get it over there without causing too much of a concern. As he made a few hand seals and sealed that creature within the scroll, he heard a voice say to him, excuse me, just what do you think you're doing? Issei looked up to see 3 young women, or rather girls, around the age group of the Konoha 11. The one had spoken, wore glasses and had long flowing black hair that came down to about her knees. She wore a uniform of sorts that had a white top, black jacket with a hole in the center for the girl's cleavage, and a short purple skirt. Not a short skirt, but short enough that it was not really decent or practical at all. On either side of this girl were 2 more girls, one with white that fell past her shoulders but not past the center of her back. This one had bust to match the first and wore the same uniform to boot. The last had blue hair that was just down to her shoulders. She too wore the same uniform as the other 2, but her bust was not large enough to force the top underneath the jacket out too much. All of them looked at him as if he had done something he was not supposed to, or rather that he had done their job for them. Now after he finished scrutinizing the 3 young women, Issei replied to the leader of the group as it seemed when he said, I'm collecting evidence. With a shrug Issei turned his back on the 3 young women and began to walk away. But a voice called out to him, do you even know what you just did, what you just killed? Issei was just about to use Horaishin dryly commented, no I do not, but I am pretty sure that kids like you shouldn't be here either. Turning around Issei gave the girls the thumbs up as he said, but it can't be that bad, after all I did take it down, no sweat. All 3 of the girls who were not looking at him were drawn to his hand, and as they did each of them slowly collapsed to the ground. Whatever they saw put them to sleep, and they lacked the knowledge and the ability to resist it. Looking at the girls and then turning away, Issei was about to leaving by using Flying Thunder God technique when his right eye itched ever so slightly. Scowling in annoyance, Issei closed his right eye and said to no one in particular, fine, I'll take them out of this place as well, damn it, but I am using the crow clones to do so, and I am going to mark all of them. Later, Madara was partly disturbed by what Issei had brought back. He was also partly annoyed that Issei had neglected to bring the 3 girls back with him. Now laying the situation out as he understood it, Madara said, from what you've said you found this thing in a warehouse with the bodies of its victims, correct? Issei gave Madara a nod as he said, yes, then when I killed it, those 3 girls appeared and asked what I was doing. When I told them I was gathering evidence, they asked if I knew what I just killed. Madara now picked up from there, saying, your response was that you did not and they should not be here either. Then you told them it wasn't so bad since you killed it, put them to sleep, took them to a park and left them there before returning here. In response to that, Issei asked, why is it that when you say it, you make it sound like it was a bad idea to leave them in a park? Madara rolled his eyes at that before he said, why is that you sound like Hashirama, or worse, that brat Naruto. When you say that, their more idiot tendencies seem to have rubbed off on you. To this Issei gave a shrug before he said, I did not believe it was a very nice thing to leave them there with all those corpses. By the way, are you going to alert the client or the authorities first? To this Madara replied, the client first, but then the regular authorities. Back on topic, you failed to consider that those 3 could have possibly known what that thing was, that or you chose to ignore it and leave them out there instead of bringing at least one of them back here for questioning. Issei now raised his hands up before he said, hey, I did mark all of them in case you did bring this up and liken me to the first Hokage. To this Madara sighed before he said, so you can find them at any time. While that is good, what will you do if one of them is bathing when you arrive for them? To this Issei calmly stated, well then they better put on their clothes and quickly, only a fool would let such urges interfere with the mission. Madara gave a nod of approval before he said, it is good to see some things you recall still. In any case, this thing is clearly not human, put it back in the scroll, leave the town area and burn it, make sure you are not followed. To this Issei gave a nod and proceeded to put the headless body of the creature back into the scroll. Before he set off though, he chose to ask, am I allowed to use regular flames or would you like the more permanent ones? In reply to this, Madara paused before he said, use the regular ones from ninjutsu first. If that does not work, then try the more permanent method like you did with the head. Issei gave Madara a nod before he turned and headed off just like a ninja. Madara watched him go, narrowed his eyes. 10 years and nothing like this had ever appeared. 10 years worth of missions and all of them had been mundane, but the first mission he gives to Issei, something occurs. If Issei had not been influenced heavily by 2 people, no, those 3 people though only 2 of them were together. It kept Issei honest about serious things, but the influence of those 2 and then that other one might not have been for the best. Proof of this was that Issei was no longer just a tool, but a person, and Madara knew he had to accept that. Issei had 4 major influences on him, of which Madara was one of them, but he was by far the earliest, but in terms of who had the most influence, Madara was not sure. But he was sure that Hashirama was not among the 4, the world did not need another wide-eyed idealist like him. He was also glad that the number 1 knuckle-headed ninja who had the least influence on Issei. That aside, it was the other 2, the one who had the most influence to Issei had spent the least amount of time with. That was what disturbed Madara a little. Unlike him and the knucklehead, these two had spent relatively little time with Issei, but he could clearly tell they had rubbed off on him. With Sona Citri. Sona Citri, more commonly known as Student Council President Sauna Shitori by all of the students in Kuo Academy, was in fact not human. She was a devil of the Citri clan and in fact their heiress as it were. She now sat in front of 3 members of her peerage who were all caught, sleeping on the job, as it were. Now Sona was smart, she knew there had to be a good reason for her queen, her bishop and her rook to all be sleeping instead of taking down what they believed to be a stray devil. Now reviewing the reports all 3 of them handed in, C said, "So let me get this straight, all of you saw this man appear out of the shadows behind the creature, catch it in some sort of trance, cut of its head with some oriental knife, pass it to himself as the other him turned into a flock of crows, set it alight with some black fire, put the headless body in a scroll, brush all of you off then bombard you with crows." Sona had to pause to catch her breath. She had said a lot, but now as she did this she looked to the members of her peerage before here, all of whom could not meet her gaze. Tsubasa Yura, the blue-haired one, spoke up first. "Kaichu, I have no words to excuse our failure, but that man, he was not too much older than us, he did not look familiar though." Sona paused to digest this before she said, "If that is the case, we have an outsider in our territory doing things that they are not supposed to, I will have to inform Rias of this." Her queen Tsubaki Shinra now spoke up saying, "Kaichu, there was something about him, his eyes, they were red or they glowed red, I can't recall, but they were not normal for a human. I cannot describe it, but I believe that the stray devil looked him in the eyes when it was put under that trance." Okay, that was another step forward as it were for them, a person who used hypnosis that was strong enough to trap a stray devil long enough for the person to behead it. If this person was friend or if they were a foe was yet to be seen, worse yet they could be a wild card and they were the worst, as least in Sona's eyes. Sona stopped pondering as she now turned to look at Tsubaki and ordered her, "We need to find this person before they pull a superhero stunt like this again. Look into all methods we can to track down someone supernaturally, I'll have Saji look into the more mundane methods as it were." Tsubaki in response almost raised an eyebrow as she asked, "Saji?" In reply to that, Sona sighed as she stated, "He has to earn his keep somehow. This will be a chance for him to do something else besides pure paperwork, and if he fails it won't have lasting consequences on him." The rest of Sona Citri's peerage who were present gave a polite nod before they headed off to do their respective tasks, leaving Sona to ponder why this was happening now and just who was this man, sealing something in a scroll. That was something like Abe no Seimei or those like him or other Onmyoji like him, but she got the feeling it was not Onmyoji that this man was. Fact was, she still had to inform Rias of this. Now while Rias was her best friend, she did not want to admit something like this to her. That someone beat her servants to a place, killed a stray devil, then put her queen, her bishop and her rook to sleep on top of it all. She could already just hear how Rias was going to laugh at that and not take he seriously at first. But that was something Sona needed to amend. If there was some superhero as it were, she needed to know who it was and fast. After all, she needed to know what was going on in and around her territory, and she also needed to know who was. No doubt Rias will turn this into a game, so she did desire to have a head start on her best friend. At the end of the day, she was a devil and devils were not known for their fairness. But now she chose to go and tell Rias of this. What point was there to a competition if you were the only one competing? Okay, how was that? First things first, before you ask, there are 4 people who have made Issei the way he is. The 4th of them is none other than Naruto himself, the 3rd is Madara, and the other 2 I am keeping secret for now, or you can take a guess. This Issei has been periodically in and out of the Naruto timeline starting back during the Warring States period up until the end of 4th Shinobi World War as it were. I will reveal all in flashbacks that Issei has. Yes, Madara still has access to the 10-tailed beast mode as it were, and Issei has access to the Rinnegan along with all the paths. Any other questions, please review CH1 of 5 next. Chapter 2. Chapter 2. Issei had been sent to make contact with a client, or rather as Issei put it, to reveal himself to the client when he felt that it was the right time to do so. Only thing was, his client was a school kid with short blonde hair, gray eyes and some sort of uniform. The kid did look like he was here on a mission, only thing was that he had to turn suddenly to look at every short skirt that came his way. His uniform was similar to those girls from back then, but then again he had seen quite a few of them in the mid and late afternoons. There was no doubt about it, this kid was the client, the details fit, the only thing was that Issei was unsure if he wanted to speak to such a guy. But time was wasting, so now as the blonde passed him for the 3rd time, Issei said, "You look like your lost friend." The boy turned around and said in a rather arrogant voice, "Oh yeah, and what is it to you, and I am not your friend." It was almost funny that this kid thought he was tough, but almost would not get a laugh out of Issei, who in turn suggested, "Perhaps you were looking for someone whom you can't seem to find." The kid clearly lacked the intellect to pick up on the hint that Issei was giving him, that he was in fact the one the blonde was meant to meet. This was confirmed when the boy said, "Well, why don't you mind your own business?" Issei decided to go a more direct approach, but he was going to be a bit of an ass about it. After all, this kid was clearly a dickhead and a possible pervert. Turning on his heel, Issei began to walk away as he said, "Well, I am sorry, didn't mean to butt in on what you were doing, hope you find your contact, kid, peace out." As Issei took a step, the kid seemed to get the message, though a part of Issei hoped that he would not. But alas, the arrogant if not slightly perverted boy did get the message and now asked, "Wait, you're my contact?" To this Issei raised an eyebrow before he asked, "That is possible, if you are indeed Genshiro." "Genshiro who?" To this the blonde looked rather annoyed when he replied, "Genshiro Saji, just call me Saji by the way, not to be rude but I really don't know you." To this Issei replied, "The name's Issei." Saji waited as if he expected to hear something else, but when nothing came he said, well Issei, can you come with me? Kaichu can show you what we need and deliver the payment. Issei blankly stated, that violates the terms of this meeting, should have read the terms and conditions that you agreed to. For security reasons I cannot go with you to meet another individual at another location, you'll have to scrap this and set up another, but that would cost you more and annoy us. Saji wanted to kick himself, he had indeed just skipped the terms and conditions, that was a mistake he wasn't supposed to make. He was a devil. In truth he was meant to make other people skip the fine print and get screwed over, not skip the fine print and get screwed himself. He could either do as this Issei said and have to arrange another meeting, or he could give the task himself as it were but have to pay out of his own pocket. Taking a deep breath he opened his mouth to speak and made his choice. Later with Sona. Saji now handed in a file with a rather triumphant smile on his face as he now handed Sona all the information that he had bought as it were. He was rather pleased with himself. In less than half a day he had been the first to get as much information as possible through the most mundane of methods. Not only that, but most of the others were yet to hand in any report. Sun on the other hand was not so optimistic, not because it was Saji who delivered the first report, actually it was because it was Saji. He was over-eager to please her and she knew it, so she knew he was more than capable of making a few mistakes, or many as it were, in order to cut corners. Tsubaki, who was currently with Sona, now opened the file that Saji had given Sona and began to look over it. She had to admit that the portraits and profiles of the people listed her looked like it had been done by a professional. To the point where she knew that someone like Saji could not have done this, but despite that fact, it did give them details on all individuals with brown hair, Japanese ethnicity and red eyes. Due to the last component of the description, the list of people it could possibly be was rather short. So whoever it was that made this list for Saji had given a list of people with a few other eye colors. But despite that, none of the faces matched what she recalled. Shaking her head now, she returned all the documents as it were into the file and handed it to Sona, saying, no, none of them are him. The light that seemed to shine from Saju's eyes vanished as he now blinked and asked, here, wait, what do you mean by that? Tsubaki in reply to him calmly replied, I mean none of them match whom it was that Hanakai, Yurara I saw. Saji was not sure of this, so he asked, Kaichu, not to be rude to Tsubaki, but can't we have Hanakai and Yura take a look before we dismiss me? Tsubaki raised an eyebrow at this. Was Genshiro Saji calling her a liar? Was he all but accusing her of lying to make him look the fool? But she did not open her mouth or act as Sona now stated, I believe that has some merit to it, I shall have the two of them look over it as soon as possible. Saji as this bowed his head as he said, thank you Kaichu. Sona herself now took a look at what the file contained and she did say straight from the get-go, you paid someone to make this, didn't you Saji? It wasn't really a question, she knew that Saji did have someone make this for him, he had no talent for this sort of thing. One thing Saji could not do yet was bring himself to light as Sona, so he now admitted, yes I did, I also had someone else gather the information for me. Sona raised an eyebrow at that, but said nothing. She reviewed his findings again before putting them away. Now taking in a deep breath she asked Saji the one question he did not want to answer, and that was, tell me Saji, how much did all of this cost you? Saji gulped and it told both Sona and Tsubaki that it had to be a substantial amount of money. Sure, in their case money was no real object. But to spend money to the point that it is wasteful was, as Sona put it, not acceptable. Sona now looked Saji in the eye, her pawn had not said a word and was looking at her with an almost pleading look. She was having none of it and stated to him, your silences tells me that it was quite substantial amount Saji, I must warn you not to be so frivolous in your spending in future. Saji's head drooped like a puppy who was being scolded as he softly said, yes Kaichu. With a nod no, Sona said to him, until I get Hanakai and Yura to look over this you are to resume your regular duties to the student council. Saji snapped to attention as he said, yes Kaichu. He now marched out of the room to go and do his duty as it were. Watching him go, Tsubaki stated to Sona, he is a little bit too eager to prove himself and please you Kaichu. In reply to that, Sona seemed to take Saji's side when she stated, he is the sole male member of the student council and thus my peerage, he clearly wishes to earn his keep as it were, but nonetheless what you say is true, he is a little too eager. Tsubaki agreed with that. She nodded her head and then went off to see what else the other members of the student council had turned up. Sona herself had to wonder if this was turning into some witch hunt, which at the same time was a race against time. The longer they took to find the answer to whom the missing man was, the more time Rias and her peerage had to find him. That and the fact that he could have already left the town as it were and be beyond her grasp. But she could not shake the feeling that this man was still here right under her nose. That, and she was half worried that the person would appear on a golden plate to Rias as it were. Her best friend had never really had to work hard at her peerage and got most of them due to chance or her brother. So she couldn't write out the factor of luck when it came to Rias just yet. With Issei. Issei was currently at a ramen store enjoying a bowl of noodles, paid for with the money of a kid he had just scammed. Well, he had not really scammed the kid, but he did hoodwink him in a sense. Clearly the guy had been looking for him. After all, who else had brown hair, looked like they were from Japan only with red eyes? The answer had been a few people did, which Issei found rather ironic since all he had to do was hand Genshiro Saji that info, collect his pay and be on his way. But that aside, he was really enjoying his ramen. This store was clearly not ramen ichiraku and did not taste as good, but it was edible. Not that he needed to eat at this point in time, but he felt the urge to do so if only to spend some time alone with his thoughts. If he had really desired to, he could have gone to any of those 3 girls from the other night and got this over with. But the game of Find the Shinobi was a bit too fun to give up just yet. He had no doubt that Madara would tell him to stop goofing around and either go and meet them or confront, if not kidnap one of them and extract information out of them that way. Either one would do, but Issei knew he had to choose which one, or Madara would choose for him, and if that was the case, Madara usually chose the crueler of the two options. But that issue was for another day. Finishing his bowl, Issei chose not to eat one more and paid for it, as well as thank the owner for the meal. As he left, he had to think, damn, it feels good to be a ninja. A real ninja played his cards right. A real ninja doesn't talk shit cause real ninjas don't start fights. Issei decided that it sounded better in his head and chose never to say that out loud. But he had to admit, in this world it did feel good to be a shinobi. There were no crazy past Madara and wannabe Madara going around doing stupid shit. There was no mama's boy and his crazy ass mother hell-bent on who knows what with a giant tree. Issei did not tell Madara, but whatever it was that Black Zetsu and Kagaya had planned for that world. But that didn't matter, all that mattered was they were assholes and Madara have given him instructions to stop them. He had to wonder, what was it that happened to Naruto after the defeat of Kagaya? Did Sasuke pull a dick move like Issei knew he would? No matter the outcome, he was sure that Naruto would win in the end. He himself had not been present due to having to leave due to the urging of Hagoromo Otsutsuki, also known as the Sage of Six Paths. Thinking about that left a bad taste in Issei's mouth, a bad taste that could only be cleansed by the wonders of ice cream. Good thing he knew the location of one that sold some that was close by, so now at a brisk pace Issei made his way in that direction. With Rias Grimori. Rias Grimori was a high-class devil and the heiress of the Grimori clan. 2 years ago she entered Kuo Academy with Sona Citri, her best friend and rival. She was with Akino, and after a day's worth of absolutely nothing, she had decided to treat herself to some ice cream. Akino, her queen and other best friend, did tease her a little about eating ice cream without actually working. But that alone was not enough to deter the crimson-haired ruined princess, for she would have her ice cream no matter what. Which led her to determinedly walk right into a young man who was enjoying deep red ice cream in a cone. The result of such a thing was that she had walked straight into his arm, knocking it into his chest and breaking the cone. In the same moment fell down on her butt as if he had run into a brick wall. The only thing was the person she ran into was shorter than her. She now looked up to see whom she had run into, and it was a young man with brown hair and dark eyes. He was wearing a white jacket with green clouds on it and had a very tired look on his face. Looking down at Rias, he offered the red-haired beauty a hand up as he attempted to speak slowly in Japanese to her. I am very sorry for that, not all people in Japan are like this. Akino, who was standing a bit behind Rias, was utterly amused by this entire situation and said, Era, it would appear that he thinks you're a tourist bushu. Rias had to hide her annoyance at her raven-haired friend's antics before she accepted the hand up and said, oh no, it is I who should be sorry, because of me you got red all over your nice white jacket. The young man gave a shrug before he said, it would not be the first time. He now turned around, walked into the store and proceeded to take a few serviettes and napkins to wipe the ice cream from his jacket. Then he proceeded to take of his jacket, folded up, which probably spread the whatever was left on it a bit more, and went to the counter for what it seemed to buy another cone. Akino raised an eyebrow when she saw that long loose overhanging jacket. He wore a loose long-sleeved shirt, utterly black and lacking collar. The sleeves here just like his jacket, loose enough to hide something within them. Whatever the reason he chose to wear clothing like that was his own. For now, taking his ice cream, he left the store. Though this time he gave both Rias and Akino a wide berth when he did so. Whoever he may be, Rias was not going to ask, nor was she going to let it linger in her mind. She had ice cream to eat, that is why she was here after all. The stranger she had bumped had already left, so she took it that he did not care that she had ruined that ice cream of his. She now dismissed him from her mind, not giving his any more second thoughts as it were, and now ordered her ice cream. With Issei. Issei had waited for some time, then decided the game of cat and mouse was a little bit too tedious, or rather he could stand still at this point and no one would find him. So he did what Madara had told him to do, or rather he did what Madara did not specifically tell him not to do. He used the Flying Thunder God technique to teleport himself as it were to the locations of the girl with the glasses whom seemed to be the leader. He knew he could have probably picked a better time to do this than in the early hours of the evening, but hey, he was a shinobi. Privacy was something that was usually in the job description. If anyone ever wanted evidence, they'd just have to look to Danzo Shimura. He had the privacy of others invaded at his behest and had his own privacy invaded at the behest of others. That, and maybe, just maybe, shinobi are not meant to give a damn, or rather are paid not to care about social norms as it were. But now he found himself in a room that looked rather grand, and his hand was upon the back of the long black-haired girl with glasses. Issei noticed that she had frozen up, not a good reaction if he had been here to kill her. That, and there was another girl in the room with a short black hair, a different kind and color of glasses, and a more reasonable sized chest. Turning on the charm, or rather more to the point, his sarcasm, Issei said, hello lovely ladies, a stupid blonde birdie sung too much in the street about looking for me, and now am I here. How do you want this to play out? Shall we speak or shall we dance? With Sona. Despite the situation and the implications of that line, Sona found it cringeworthy, not only that but she had to actively stop herself from screwing up her face. She knew that blonde stupid bird had to have been Saji, guess trying to please her med cutting corners. But despite the evidence to the contrary, she was certain he had not just blabbed it all out in the middle of the street. But now focusing at the issue on hand, she said, please, don't harm my subordinate, just take your hand off her. Sona was by time as she got a spell ready, she very much on guard with a man who seemed to be able to appear out of thin air, no circle, no magic, no nothing. But the said man only replied to her, I am perfectly willing to be reasonable if you are willing to stop the actions that your left is taking. Sona managed to hide her surprise, despite the fact that he had been looking into her eyes this whole time. He had seen what she had been trying to do. Not only that, he had recognized it as dangerous, that was in spite of the fact that she could feel no magic from him, as it were. Which meant he either was hiding it or did not have any and had no idea what she was doing, but knew it was not for his own good. Sona tried to play it off while she attempted to finish her spell. I'm sorry, what? I'm just a little nervous, that is all. You appeared thin air, as it were. The man did not take that as an answer, and Sona saw his eye turn red as if some sort of wheel spun, and then his eyes were red. Those red eyes, they were not normal, they were shining red, as it were, and had 3 extra dots or more like figures inside them. When he spoke, it was much harsher and more powerful, as it were, than before, as he now said, cease and desist, we can settle this with words, or we can dance, whichever you prefer, option you prefer to take. Now Sona would have taken the option to dance, as it were, or rather fight, as the case may be. But he did have one of her peerage hostage. Not only that, but she suddenly felt that something was not right. She could not put her finger on it, but it felt out of place. Like there was a vital part of the room that was missing, or as if something had been added on. So now cautiously she opened her hand and said, alright, let's talk. The man no seemed to take his hand off the back of Tsubaki, who was still frozen stock still. She only moved when the man said to her, or rather commanded her to move. Walk towards your friends, nice and slow, no sudden movements. When you reach her, turn around and face me, palms facing me. Tsubaki did as she was told, walking slowly towards Sona, who now looked away from the eyes of the man and towards his hand. In his hand there was nothing at all. In fact, his hand was now making some sort of sign that Sona did not know the meaning to. He now said to her, the name is Issei, case you didn't know. Sona now decided to introduce herself as her alias rather than her actual self, saying, I am Shitori Sauna, student council president of Kuo Academy. Tsubaki, who now had reached Sona, turned around and looked directly into the man's eyes. Sona, who now glanced to her queen, was able to tell from her reaction that this was indeed the same man. Her queen now confirmed this when she said, that is him, the eyes, they match, no wait, something is not right, they are not exactly the same. The man ignored her before he addressed Sona and asked her, now which part of what you told me is a lie, your name or your position, but you have tried to fool twice, try a third time at your own peril. With Issei, it really didn't. If she lied a third time, she couldn't do anything to him. After all, she was caught in a genjutsu, and so was that friend of hers. They would only figure out that they could no longer move when they tried to take hostile action. Issei was kind of an ass like that, one for luring his targets into a false sense of security before dropping the bomb that it was all an illusion. Issei had once made an illusion that a man believed he had lived out his life happily and achieved his dreams. He had a family, kids, and even grandkids. Then Issei dispelled him of the illusion and let him know that only 1 second had passed by. That man broke and killed himself. Issei would by lying if he told anyone he did not take any pleasure such an action. But that aside, the 2 girls in front of him seemed to be on edge, very on edge. But since they were already in his genjutsu, Issei chose to take a seat as he said, please go on, tell me why you student council president would be in the business of monster hunting, do tell me, Shitori-san. The girl took in a deep breath as she now saw that Issei's guard was down and she was just about to attempt to move along with her friend. But clearly they found that they could not move at all. To add to the effect of them being at his mercy, Issei said, oh, do go on, I am only so relaxed, because you are both completely at my mercy, pick a god and praise them that I am merciful, to a point. Issei noted that they visibly winced when he said the word god, he was not sure why though. But he chose not to pursue this and instead told the 2 of them. Hey, I am not evil, as it were, I can be an ass if you want me to be, but I am willing on a mutual exchange of information, as long as you do not try to cheat, lie or cause me harm. In reply to this, the girl asked, will you agree to the same terms? Issei gave a nod as he confirmed to her, I shall. The girl looked unsure again. She had no reason to trust his word after all, but then again he had no reason to trust hers. But as a sign of good faith on his part, Issei released the 2 of them from the genjutsu. As soon as he did this, he asked them, now, the first question I would like to is what was that thing, the one which I killed the other night? With Sona now replied to the young man named Issei, stating, that is a stray devil, it is what becomes of a servant who has diverted away from their master. Without their master to keep their power in check, the stray devil becomes unstable and grow out of control, that is why it was acted and looked the way it was. She had added in the extra bits of information to let this young man know that not all devils acted like, and is a sign of good faith, as it were. The young man seemed to take this in for a bit, and then there was just silence on his part. Sona took this as an invitation to ask him a question, and she took it before Tsubaki could. She had to word it carefully to get an answer that he could not justify with minimum words. Tell me, Mr. Issei, just how were you able to defeat yet alone kill a stray devil? Without needed to pause to consider his words, Issei replied to her, claiming, I had a few very talented teachers, as it were, that and it wasn't very smart, having power and force is meaningless without skill. Sona did have to admit, she had to agree with the last part of that statement, he had been trained to fight. He had avoided telling her what he was though, this part she was annoyed a little but did not let it show. It was now clearly his turn to ask her a question, and he did. Tell me, Citri-san, just who are you? Asking you to tell me everything would be unreasonable, so tell me who you are, your dreams for the future and your hobbies. Sona had to admit she had agreed not to lie to this man, so she had to tell him the full truth. She could try to lie, but if he caught on, she knew she and Tsubaki could be in serious trouble. But at least she now knew how to ask him about himself and expect an honest answer. I am Sona Citri, heiress to the Citri clan, one of the 33 remaining devil clans out of the 72 pillars. I Came to the human world in order to learn the school system to fulfill my dream of creating a rating game school open to all devils regardless of their status. I enjoy playing chess and improving my skills in order to help them accomplish my dream. Issei seemed to take this in and Sona noticed that Issei did not seem to scoff or react at all to her claiming to be a devil. In fact he did not react at all, something that Sona did find a little odd as it were. It was not every day that someone claimed to be a devil to your face. If he believed her or not, Sona was unable to tell but his silence told her that it was her turn to ask a question. So she did. Now Issei-san, can you tell me who you are, your dreams for the future and your hobbies? Issei replied to the heiress of the Citri clan with a nod before he said, my name is Issei, I was trained to be a shinobi by Madara Uchiha head, a former head of the Uchiha clan. My dreams for the future as it were to help amend the mistakes he had made in life as it were, which to an extent I was able to do. As far as hobbies go, I enjoy eating a few meals such as ramen and ice cream. I do enjoy honing my skills. He was a ninja, but that made no sense at all. How does a ninja defeat a stray devil? That and what did he mean when he stated that had amended the mistakes his master had made to an extent? While she did want to know the answer to that, she instead asked, how does a ninja defeat and kill a stray devil? He did not answer her in his reply, he just simply reminded her, I do believe it was my turn, Citri-san. Sona did not react to that openly again. She had trained herself not to react too openly when she was frustrated. But she had to admit, it was his turn to ask her something and ask away he did. Citri-san, do tell me, why is it that a devil as you state or claim to be, walks in the realms of men as it were? Why is it here on earth as it were and you are not where text state you originate from, hell or the underworld, whatever it is called? Note Issei might come off as a bit of a dickhead, but he is still politer than Sasuke as it were. Please read and review and do mention who you like a pairing with, no harems though. Previous ch2 of 5 next. Chapter 3. Chapter 3. The discussion or rather exchange of information between Sona and Issei had been fruitful at least to Issei. He had learned all about the three factions, the war, the aftermath of the war so on so forth. On the other hand Sona had learned about the shinobi world or the parts about it that Issei had told her. Now as Sona adjusted her glasses she asked, so from what you've said you are not from another world, but you have been there. To this Issei gave a nod as he confirmed, that is correct, I was born here in this town to be exact. Sona took this in and said, then this chakra that you speak of does everyone have it? In reply to that Issei paused for a moment then decided to say, no, not to my knowledge, if they could do so, I am sure you and your associates would already know of it. Sona countered this by saying, you claim so, but we were unable to track you down and you chose to contact us as it were, how do I know that there are not more of you out there? Issei gave a slight smile to that before he let his Sharingan flash for all of a moment as he said, because there are very few shinobi who can claim to be on the same level as I. Sona did not budge as she calmly stated, that is a bold claim. To this Issei gave a shrug as he yawned and said, you may claim so, I know so, but then again there would be those under my level as well who could elude you as it were, so in the end the point of them being as powerful as I am or not is moot. This was another very valid point that Sona had not thought of, but now she chose to ask him, Issei, may I ask, just how many other shinobi do you know in this world? A smirk now appeared on Issei's face as soon as Sona asked that. It caused the two devils to tense up as if they were getting ready to be attacked. But Issei's eyes did not flash his Sharingan and he only said, a shinobi I know only one by the name of Madara Uchiha, he usually does not do much anymore. But if ill fate befalls you and his path crosses yours then. Issei did not finish that sentence, he left it there hanging as it were for Sona to understand what it meant. Sona, understanding that he was not or could not tell them anymore, now chose to reply to him giving some information of her own. I am not the only devil in Kuo, there is another of the same class as I, her name is Rias Grimori and her peerage. She withheld the information about Rias and her peerage just as Issei had told her nothing about Madara. She knew that Issei knew this as well, but he also knew that she knew he knew and that she desired him to give more information in exchange. But he chose to play the game as it were because it amused him, and now Issei stated, Madara was my mentor in a sense, he is here in Kuo and you could say is my boss. Sona gave a nod and then stated, Rias and her peerage have their base here in this academy, but they usually go out into the town to fulfill contracts. Issei took note of this and now rose from his seat and said, well, I do believe that this is at an end. I do apologize if I did any harm to your fellows, and if you need my services just contact me. Sona raised her eyebrow at that. Clearly this man knew a chance to offer his services when he saw it. Only thing was she did not know when she would need them or how to contact him. So now Sona asked him, wait, if I mean to contact you, how can I do so? Issei gave a chuckle in reply then said, just ask your friend, Genshiro Saji I believe his name was. He was able to contact me and no offense intended, but he did not seem too bright as it were. I am sure one of your intellect would be able to find us if you really tried to. With that Issei vanished or rather flickered away as it were, leaving Sona and Tsubaki to ponder what they had just learned. Issei had assured them that there was no true way for one to travel between worlds at will any longer. But the matter at hand, or rather the new problem, was if he was telling the truth. But now when Sona spoke to Tsubaki she had made her decision, yet it was about something else entirely. I do believe for the moment we should keep all that we have learned to ourselves. Tsubaki, whom we met, and what he said never occurred for the moment, no one else needs to know. Tsubaki just gave a nod and Sona was unsure if her queen truly understood why she was doing this. They had just met a ninja or shinobi as it were who claimed to have been in another world. If news of that got out too soon without them knowing all the facts around it, it would cause a disaster. The three factions as it were would start to compete to find a way to this new world, and from there it could only get worse. Another war as it were would leave the world shattered and all factions in ruins. The world in such a state was not a sight that Sona desired to see. So that meant if she now had to keep secrets until she had learned hard evidence that it could no longer be reached, she would do so. In the end, the things we want to do and the things we have to do are not always the same. For now it was her secret to keep, but she had to wonder for how long and if this Issei would end up crossing paths with another devil or the other's factions. With Issei, if the world was as complex as Sun Citri had made it out to be, then Issei knew he needed to report this to Madara right away. But after he had explained the situation to Madara, the old shinobi could only chuckle ominously. There was no anger, no asking Issei why he had revealed so many details, only that chuckle. Issei knew that Madara wanted him to ask him why he was reacting like this. Issei also knew that Madara knew that he knew. In any case, Issei was not going to ask him why he was chuckling as if he was about to fight Hashirama in the days of old and say and said, "Well, while you chuckle darkly and whisper some prophetic truths, I'm going to go grab myself some ice cream." Madara ceased his chuckle and looked Issei right in the eye as he said, "You do that, but after you are done, do try go gather more information on these factions, as it were, angels, devils and fallen angels." Issei did want to tell Madara to do it himself, but he got the feeling that if Madara did do it himself, it would be very bad for everyone. So now with a nod he said, "After I am done getting more ice cream I'll do it." In reply to that, Madara simply said, "See that you do." No more words passed between the two of them as Issei now made his way outside and went to the ice cream store for the second time that day. The girl at the counter didn't seem to mind seeing him again, though he had a different change of clothes this time. Issei, who purchased a rather large tub this time, was about to make his way to a park where he'd partake in the cherry ice cream when he felt a set of eyes upon him. Subtly, Issei glanced around and saw a small petite girl wearing the same uniform as Citri had staring at him, or rather the ice cream tub. She was small, had yellow eyes and pale skin, and no matter how Issei looked at her, he got the distinct feeling that her stance was cat-like. She was eyeing his ice cream and he could not help but want to torment this person. Now as he made a wooden spoon that came out from the palm of his hand, Issei slowly opened the ice cream tub. He let the aroma of the ice cream linger in the air after he opened the tub, and with speed of might guy himself, Issei ate it all instantly. He now offhandedly let the little girl see that he had eaten all of the ice cream, then disposed of it in a nearby bin. He did have to admit though, he did feel a little bad that he had done that. He wasn't Sasuke that could be a total asshole then act like he did nothing wrong. It did cause Issei to ponder about the main question everyone in Konohagakure asked: why is it that most of the Uchiha are arrogant, unrepentant assholes? There were few exceptions to this, but they were only a handful or so. Madara, due to the fact he had the humility to acknowledge and praise others even if they were an enemy, made him part of that handful. Issei did have to admit to himself though, he was glad he was not raised in the Uchiha clan during the time of its downfall. He could have turned out to be a total sore loser, like Sasuke. Sure, he had the excuse of losing his entire family, but the real problem was that alternate timelines proved that no matter what, he'd be an asshole. Madara once told Issei, "There is no cure for one who truly is a fool." Who is a fool, one may ask, but that was anyone who thought themselves so skilled or talented that no one could possibly be better than them. That fitted Sasuke to the E, and Issei quite liked that it was so, to think that he was Itachi's brother. That fool would honor Itachi, whom sacrificed his everything for Konoha, by destroying Konoha. Issei, after he learnt this, had informed Madara that during that time he had discovered a new level of stupid. 2 people had taken out the entire Uchiha clan. Well, perhaps there were 3 people. That should have been proof enough to the entire world that the Uchiha clan, whom all thought were taken out by a single shinobi, were not top shit. Or were they top shit? But the problem with being top shit is that you're still a shit in the end. Issei's right eye now itched as a response for being such an asshole, and he sighed and under his breath said, I get, I'll stop digging around." With that he went back home, or rather to the house where Madara stayed. He lived there for sure, but it was not home. A thought that kept on coming to Issei was, can I sneak one past the Sage of 6 Paths and get back into the shinobi world? The answer to that question was most probably no. With Sona had made Saji give her a report on who he got in contact with and how he had done so. Looking over the method that was in place, Sona had to admit it was genius in its own right. Simple, not obvious, an approach that roots out those who are not truly worth their time. Or rather those who are not dedicated enough to commit time to contacting them. It must have been only one of the ways to contact Issei, as it were. There had to be other methods, if not they got very little work. But if it was true that they had very little work, Sona could enact a plan she had put together, as it were. It would allow her to keep tabs on the shinobi, as it were, as well as give her a reason for them to be close by. Tsubaki, who was reviewing the plan Sona had laid out, now asked in a neutral tone, will this work? In reply to the question posed by her queen, Sona answered, I don't see why not. It is a mutually beneficial agreement, I made sure of that. Tsubaki gave Sona a nod while she adjusted her glasses. When Sona Citri thought something was a good idea, it generally was. The only problem per se was if the shinobi in question did not believe it to be so. That is why Sona was getting the only second opinion she could trust with this. After all, she had decided to keep this on the low for now, in order to maintain peace, as it were. Her being the only one who knew that the shinobi was from another world and was capable of dealing with stray devils was a secondary benefit, as it were. Sona was certain that if it had been Rias whom Issei had revealed himself to first, then that would have been the primary benefit. Tsubaki now took in a deep breath before she interrupted Sona's train of thought, saying, as far as I can tell it is acceptable, but if he does not wish to accept it, he won't accept it. That was true. Issei had not revealed too much about what type of person he was, and he was beyond her ability to read. Sona's mind did drift for a moment as she pondered if Issei was any good at chess and how hard an opponent would he be. But her thoughts returned to the matter at hand when she recalled that she had a long process to go through in order to contact Issei via this method. She did have to admit, she would need to praise Saji on his tenacity for cutting corners. He sure took a long route on this one. Exhaling loudly, Sona said to her queen, "Alright Tsubaki, let's get down to it." The next day with Issei. Issei had to admit, he did not believe that the two devils would call on him so soon. But then again, they were as they claimed to be devils. Such beings were not meant to be known for not taking advantage of a situation if they could. Now waiting for them outside Maid Cafe, Issei saw the two of them approach the location of the meeting. Normally Issei, as per Madara's orders, should just leave the area if the contact did not come alone. But this Miss Sona Citri must have been used to reading the fine print, as it were. For she made sure to add that there would be one extra person with the contact, which was herself, of course. Now as they drew closer to him, Issei walked inside. He had no need to worry about others hearing him. He had put everyone in her to sleep using, and thanks to the one-way windows, no one could see in. Sona Citri and Tsubaki Shinra soon entered as well, and after they did this, Issei hung the closed sign up outside the Maid Cafe. Sona now saw that there was no one conscious other than the three of them, and so had to remark, "You chose a very odd location for the meeting." To this Issei replied, "People at these establishments are more inclined to be fooled by illusion-based tricks and also would not be missed for a time if they are late to most things." He let Sona get the impression that all the patrons of this place were either living with their parents or on their own. No, she just handed him a folder, as it were, with a few documents in it. As she did this, she said, "Here is that contract that I indicated that I wished to form between us. Go over it as you must. I do believe that it will be beneficial to both you and I." Issei did not comment on that. He took the folder from here and opened it. He began to flip through them, but Issei did not skim them. Oh no, this was a contract with a devil. If he was going to take it, he was going to go over all of it. Though he did it rather fast, he was able to read every single line, every single letter, and grasp their meaning as well. With Sona, after Issei had seemingly read through it for the third time, he said to her, "It is reasonable, this entire town as it were is your territory." He clearly did not want a response, as he began to now read a line on the first page. The line had to do with what she was asking of him, as it were. Sona took in a deep breath right before Issei said, "The contract will have you serve as an enforcer within the Citri territory of Kuo. This will allow us to know if it is you who is taking out stray devils and other mythical beasts, and in turn allow you to gain a better insight into the devil faction." He stopped reading and now looked Sona in the eyes as he asked her, "So tell me, why do you believe that I care for gaining a better insight into the devil faction?" Sona, whom knew this was coming, did have an answer ready for him. It was at moments like this she was glad she had read her contract at least 20 times and had made sure she had an answer for everything. "I cannot say if you are or not, but I do believe that it would be beneficial for you, since after the other night our paths are bound to cross again." Sona now gave a pause, waiting for any rebuttal, retort, or correction by Issei, which did not come. He just waited for her to continue, and Sona took the chance to do so. "It would allow you to go freely after such creatures that we would normally deal with, and in turn allow us not to jump to the wrong conclusions." Before Sona could continue what she was saying, Issei took the words right out of her mouth. "If you act on your own, the wrong conclusion that will be drawn and will lead to the renewal of the Great War." Sona was speechless for a moment. He had taken the words right out of her mouth as if she was reading her mind or seeing the future. But she was able to regain her composure and now compliment Issei by saying, "You are rather intelligent, more so than most I know. Not many can take my own words out of my mouth before I have a chance to say them." Issei gave a small smirk as he now said to her, "I was well trained, your reasoning is understandable, but you do realize that the renewal of the Great War would be a lot better for business." Now Sona was not sure if Issei could get behind such an argument or not, but better not to take a chance. Such a thing was an obvious argument, so of course Sona had prepared a rebuttal for it. Now adjusting her glasses, Sona said, "While you claim that, you cannot imagine the scale of damage the Great War would cause to the current world and to the three factions." Issei now cut her off, saying, "The damage it would cause would leave us without any contractors, human, devil, angel or fallen angel, or so you believe, but one cannot implicitly trust the words of a devil." Now that was true, and Sona could feel the racism in that remark, but then again, would could blame Issei for it? She was in truth a devil, and most people believe such creatures are sin incarnate. The old Satans did create that image after all. So after taking in a deep breath, Sona said, "I cannot sway you with words. All I ask, if nothing else, that you believe that what I saw about the renewal of the Great War to be true." To this Issei just gave a slight chuckle as he said, "Well, I have to give you credit for knowing your limits, but I am the type of guy to deduct points from those who don't even put in the effort." Sona was not sure what that meant, but now as she looked Issei in the eye, he told her, "I guess I could do worse. I'll accept it for now. Where do we sign for this, as it were? Do you need my blood for the contract?" Sona got the feeling he was not being rude, he was being serious, so she replied, "No, that is not needed." Issei gave a nod to this and then commented, "You were rather lax with contracts then." Sona did want to explain to him more about what a devil's contract was, and this was not one of them. But she figured that would just confuse the situation, as it were, so instead she asked, "Issei, just how old are you?" She saw Issei pause and seemed to be counting in his head before he replied to her, "I am around 16 years old, why do you ask?" Sona had been about to say he looked much older than that, well, not much older. But that would have been rude of her, and she was not going to make such a mistake. So instead she said, "You give off the feeling that you are a veteran, that you have fought many battles, and I mean large scale." He replied to Sona with a chuckle. That chuckle would have gotten past Rias as harmless, but the heir of the Citri clan could tell that it was rather malevolent. Still chuckling, Issei said, "You could say that I have fought for most of my life, since I could remember." Sona now chose to ask, though she was not sure about the answer Issei would give. Just how long ago was since you could remember? Issei's reply to that was just a shrug as he now got up and said to the two of them, I do believe it is time we leave this fine establishment, for it has served its purpose. Sona had to agree to that, but there was one more thing she had to ask before they left this place, and it had to do with the people here. He could kill them and it would make the news, no doubt, but someone with the powers Issei had could get away with it. Not only that, he could do so and no one would ever know what to look for. So no, she asked, Issei, can I ask you, what is going to happen to the people in here once we leave? It surprised Sona and Tsubaki when he gave them a totally straight and sincere answer. Most likely they will just go back to living their lives as normal, though they are no doubt late to any event that they had to attend, if not missed it entirely. At least that cleared up one thing to Sona. It was that while Issei did have the ability to get bored and go around killing people, he clearly chose not to do so even if he could get away with it. Then again, if he did kill all the people within this place, he'd also have to silence her and Tsubaki. Sona was about to leave when Issei told her, I do not go around randomly killing people, Sona Citri. I do so because I am paid to, or in some cases I have to do so in order to maintain the will of fire no matter the cost. Before she could ask what that was, Issei was out the door and the people in the maid cafe were waking up from some sort of daze. Sona was not sure about Issei as a whole. He had agreed to the contract she had proposed, but it was yet to be seen if he would honor it, as it were. A shinobi was not known for their honor. But Sona for this moment had done all that she could do for now. All she could do was wait and see what Issei would do next. But she recalled her surroundings, as it were, and knew she and Tsubaki should not be in this place for very long. Not even the four Satans would know what rumors would be spread by Rias if she saw the Citri heir and her queen leaving this place. The thought of it did make Sona shudder a little. Some things she did not need to be discovered, and that was one of them. Turning to Tsubaki, Sona says, I believe we should leave this place. For now we will have to wait for tomorrow. Tsubaki gave her master a nod and then began, and the two of them began to leave the maid cafe. With Rias, high-class devil and heir of the Grimoire clan, Rias Grimoire was now watching the school gate out of her window of the occult research club. Sona had contacted her and stated that she was calling off the search for the stray devil killer. Rias, to say the least, was extremely disappointed by this. For starters, it means that she can't have her little competition. Then there came the part where she did actually wish to meet this stray devil killer, since he or she had killed a stray devil on his own. That and would like to have a person of that quality in her peerage, and she felt that Sona would try to do the same. Only thing was she had nowhere to start, as it were, and Sona had stated that he appeared to be male with brown hair and red eyes. The major problem she had was that the only three people who could have identified the man or woman were part of Sona's peerage. Even though the competition was over and there had been no victor, Rias was unsure if she could get them to cooperate with her and identify the stray devil killer. She now let the phrase roll off her tongue, the stray devil killer. There was a ring to it that sounded rather nice, edgy and mysterious. Not to mention that it would make a great TV show down in the underworld. Rias had wanted to stream it, but the terms and conditions on both Twitch and Facebook would not let her go and search from some killer like that. She could still continue the search and stream that to the underworld versions of both sites, but it would be rather boring since she had no leads. The only real big update to the entire situation was that Sona had called it all off. The cause of which Rias suspected had something to do with her family. Rias knew Sona well enough that she would not just give up on something, unless her sister was involved. If that was the case, Sona's elder sister could have been the stray devil killer all along. She would have done it to help out her little sister. While that theory did make sense in Rias's head, it didn't in theory or reality. So now that she was staring at the school gate, she noticed Sona and Tsubaki entering the school. Despite the fact there was plenty of evidence dictating otherwise. Deep in the recesses of the black froth which passed for Rias's mind, she had decided that Sona never left the school. She had to admit though, despite the fact that Sona was so uptight, her best friend was not in a shitty engagement due to her being uptight. At this point, if she wished to escape her engagement, she'd be challenged to a rating game. But with her team currently, there'd be no way for her to win that game unless she found a way to cheat. Even if she did cheat, she had to first figure how she would cheat and if she would be able to even win if she did cheat. Which did give Rias pause when she thought about it in greater depth. What is the point of cheating if you don't win when you cheat? With Issei, who had accepted the contract, was now kicking back in his room, resting as it were. The first thing he had done was explain to Madara everything, and the ancient Uchiha had taken it in with his stride. All that had been said to Madara had been said, and now Issei had planned to get some shut-eye for a time. But like most things in the world, nothing goes according to plan. Instead, Issei found himself now outside, now grabbing some food as it were. It was as he got to the park he felt a sense tingle within his mind and his right eye itched madly. It stopped when his eyes rested on a middle-aged man with short black hair and blue eyes. He was wearing a jacket with some sort of hat, but that was not why Issei saw. No, Issei saw that the man held the eyes of a killer, and it would appear he was going to be the next victim. A smirk appeared on Issei's face. This man had made a very big mistake choosing Issei as his next victim. There was no one else around in this park. Of course, the day was almost over, the sun was dying in the sky, and no right-minded fool murders in broad daylight with people around to catch him. But that was unfortunate for this man, for Issei was a firm practitioner of overly violent self-defense. Not to mention the fact that eyes that could literally start fires while he also breathes it. This fool did not know what he was in for. Hello, I hope that you enjoyed this chapter, and no, it is not on a cliffhanger. We all know what is going to happen next. Please review and let me know what you think of the story. No flaming thanks. First, previous ch3 of 5 next. 4. Chapter 4. Flashback. It had been a rather ominous night. The third Hokage and his Anbu, Team RO, had just arrived at the Uchiha clan district. They had arrived with a mission of extreme importance, but it was only tragedy that awaited them. One of the masked Anbu who was inspecting a corpse commented, "This is horrible." This was not what the third Hokage wanted to see. This was not the solution to the planned rebellion of the Uchiha clan. After surveying the situation, he turned to his Anbu and ordered them, find and rescue any survivors. The masked shinobi turned and jumped off to sweep the Uchiha clan district in order to find any survivors. Hiruzen was not pleased. He had set off to try to quell the Uchiha and intercept their coup d'etat. But no, from the looks of it, the entire district was bathed in the blood of its inhabitants. It looked as if there would be no survivors. Suddenly the third Hokage's eyes were drawn to a building where he heard the calling of crows. The old shinobi knew what that meant, and he knew there were only two people that used crows to announce their presence. Arriving out of the shadows was a young man, if not a teen, a face that Hiruzen had not seen a while, but a face he would never forget. The Anbu that were nearby jumped to their Hokage and formed some sort of protective line in front of him. But the third Hokage stood them down by raising his left arm and saying, "On a night like this, it is only fitting that you would appear. After all, you are the ghost of the Uchiha." The teen now took a step closer to Hiruzen as he said, "Not many call me that to my face, but yes, it is only fitting that I be here." The third Hokage knew it had to be him, from all those years ago, though he was older, but not by much. He recalled what type of person the teen had been back then and asked him now, "Was it you? Did you do this to your entire clan?" To this the teen shook his head and looked up at the moon. There was an uneasy silence that no one dared to fill. But after a few good deep breaths of the Anbu has passed. The teen said, "No, I did not do this to the entire clan, but I did have a part in it." The Anbu went for their weapons now, and just as they were about to draw them, the third Hokage commanded them, "Stop, do not draw your weapons on this man, he is not as he appears to be." The Anbu froze now at the order of their Hokage, that in the killing intent that came out of the teen was enough to freeze anyone in their tracks. But not Hiruzen Sarutobi, not the student of the second Hokage and the inheritor of the Will of Fire. While Team RO froze up, he took a step forward and asked rather than demanded, "Tell me, ghost of the Uchiha Issei, what occurred here, what happened to the Uchiha clan tonight?" The teen or ghost of the Uchiha Issei took in a deep breath before he sighed greatly. He now replied to Hiruzen, "Prior to you arriving here, Sarutobi, Itachi Uchiha, myself and a man claiming to be Madara executed the Uchiha clan before they could stage the coup d'etat. We killed them all but one." Hiruzen felt a little uneasy at the name Madara. He knew well enough that if Issei did not believe the man was whom he claimed to be, there had to be a reason for it. So now, carefully wording his question, the old Hokage asked, "You do not believe this man was the Madara Uchiha, do you?" Issei, in reply to the third Hokage, shook his head as he explained, "He could not be. While he did possess a single Mangekyo Sharingan, from what I saw he clearly had Kamui, which Madara did not possess." Hiruzen recalled the mention of Madara causing something before and now asked Issei, "You were there when the Nine Tails attacked. You said that fourth Hokage did battle with someone using the same ability. Could this be the same person?" Issei gave his old comrade a nod as he replied, "Of that I have no doubt." Hiruzen now asked the teen, "Why did you do this? It didn't have to end this way." Issei now took in a deep breath as he said, "I was asked to help a friend. There is no other reason as to why I took part in this." Hiruzen clenched his fists at hearing this. He was not angry at Issei, no, he was angry at himself. If things had not gotten this far, then an outcome like this would never have happened. He blamed himself for this, just as he had done so for the last war that caused him to retire. But now, to the surprise of the Anbu and the third Hokage himself, Issei stated, "You are not to blame for this, Sarutobi. When you meet Kagami in the afterlife, he will not hold this against you. The Uchiha, they gave up and embraced the curse of hatred rather than the will of fire." Hiruzen now stated, "This is not the first time you have done something rash like this, is it?" To this Issei bluntly stated, "I am not a well-known shinobi, nor can I be affiliated with the village. Hizashi may have willingly gone to his death, but he had to be avenged. The fourth Raikage tried to take a child of Konoha, now he will never have any of his own." The third Hokage was about to say something, but Danzo, his old comrade who had gone to the Uchiha police headquarters, spoke first. "I must say, I knew that Itachi would do this since he was loyal to the village, but for you to do it, he must have truly been a very good friend. But this does settle everything. The coup is not longer going to occur." None could read his tone, none except those who had known Danzo Shimura for a while. Despite the calm indifference that Danzo was displaying, his voice still had the remnants of fear within it. The same fear that had stopped him from offering himself up as the diversion. Issei's eyes suddenly flashed his Mangekyo Sharingan as the teen's gaze turned to fix on the old man next to Hiruzen. In a voice that held the promise of pain and death, Issei said, "Ashimura, or should I call you? Lord Danzo, how nice of you to join us on this wonderful night. How long has it been since the three of us were together at night? Since that almost a lifetime ago. Are you going to tremble like a coward just as you did back then?" The third Hokage has never seen such hostility from Issei towards Danzo before. Yet as he was about to ask why Issei was threatening Danzo, Issei told him the answer. "If you still desire the one who set this all in motion, look no further in the honored Lord Danzo. Would you like me to explain how?" The third Hokage did consider it, but he decided not to do so. He now told the Anbu, "Clear the bodies away, all of them. Danzo, I am going to remove your Anbu, and until further notice you will be confined to your quarters." To his credit, Danzo did not deny anything as he said, "All that I have done was for Konoha." As a counter to that, Hiruzen said, "For Konoha. The Uchiha clan was from Konoha. What you did caused the total destruction of founding clan. Issei now spoke once more as he said, "One last thing, Shimura, hand it over or I will pry it from your cold dead body. I am here to collect on half of what you promised Itachi, hand over the you stole from Shisui." Present. Sona Sitri had been lecturing Issei on what his actions might have caused. Issei had not really paid attention to her. No, his thoughts were on the Uchiha clan downfall and the fallout from that fateful night. He also had to wonder how much bullshit could have been avoided if he just killed Sasuke that night. That brat had chosen to avenge his brother whom had given everything for Konoha, by destroying Konoha. But now Sona had caught on to him just spacing out and asked, "Are you even paying attention to me?" Issei almost in a robotic way. Issei blinked back to life as he replied to her, replying honestly, "No, I was not paying attention to you, I was recalling a bad night out, more than 5 years ago, no more than 7 years ago." Sona, who was clearly not happy with Issei, chose to ask him, "And what was so special about this night that you chose to reminisce about it rather than listen to me explain the consequences of what you did to that fallen angel?" Issei did not reply to her, even though Sona had clearly intended for him to do so. When it was clear that she was not going to get an answer from that, Sona asked more clearly, "Tell me about that night." Issei in reply to this just said, "I will not." Sona gave a blink. She was smart enough to know that nothing she did would get him to tell her if he did not wish to. But that did spark her interest in it, so she could not help herself as she now narrowed her eyes and adjusted her glasses. Yet she knew better than to press the subject presently, and so she now said, "I guess I'll have to explain to you why what you did was dangerous and could upset the uneasy peace of the three factions." Issei gave a shrug as he said, "You may do so, but I may not listen, again." To anyone else, Issei must have come off as arrogant as well as a right royal asshole. But no, Sona was not anyone. She was Sona Sitri, the heiress of the Sitri clan. She could see, though there was no emotion on the face of Issei, she could see that he was focusing on something. She could also tell that whatever it was he was thinking of troubled him and wasn't a pleasant memory. If she had been Rias, she might have pressed the matter, but no, she now stopped and instead chose a different approach. She chose to ask Issei, "Tell me, what did you do to that fallen angel?" The troubled look in Issei's eyes vanished as he now looked at Sona and told her, "Well, this is what I did." Flashback. The tall man had grown a pair of black feathered wings and had thrown some glowing spears at Issei, but he had not been fast enough. Issei easily sidestepped the incoming projectiles and with hand seal of the tiger, he used fire release, great fire destruction. Issei spewed forth a massive stream of intense flames that engulfed its target and the area behind it. Whatever that winged guy was, he gave out a scram as his whole body was burnt up if not incinerated by the attack. The real issue was that now there was an entire area now ablaze with fire that was spreading rather fast. That was not a good thing, and Issei knew since he had started this problem he had to fix it, and luckily for everyone else, he knew just how to do so. Making a half the hair hand seal with his right hand, he took in a deep breath before he opened his mouth and used water release, wild water wave. Water now gushed from the same place the flames had a few moments ago. It fell like a blanket over the area that had been affected by the fire release. Great fire destruction, and thanks to the amount of chakra Issei put into it, it was able to put out the fire. Issei could not deny the fact that him just 2 years ago would never have let something like this occur. In fact, him a few weeks ago would never have used such powerful jutsus that could attract attention like this. If he had to blame anything, it was his lack of purpose and the fact that he just wanted to end this guy quickly and painfully without really getting serious. Now as he checked the body or what was left of his attack, he found that the man had been burnt to a crisp but was not dead. The fellow by some means was alive, though barely, and Issei could not help but note he did have wings still, though they were no feathers on them anymore. Copying the famous words of Shikamaru Nara, he said, "What a drag." Now as he was about to finish this guy off, he heard a voice call out to him. It was not a voice he would have stopped for, except that he got the feeling that she knew more about what was going on than he did. It was the voice of Sona Sitri, and though she was not hysterical, there was some hysteria in her eyes when she said, "Stop, just what are you doing? You lit up the entire park, do you know what you have done?" Turning to her, Issei said, "I know what I just did, but if you are talking about any long-reaching consequences, no, enlighten me." Sona had been about to explain it right then and there, but her queen Tsubaki said to her, "Perhaps you can explain it to him at length, back at the student council room, Kaichu." Sona had to agree with Tsubaki on this. She had almost let herself get too caught up in the moment, as it were. So now she said, "I agree, we can talk about this at length when we are not in the middle of a burnt-up park." But before they could leave, Issei pointed to the burnt figure on the ground as he asked, "So what are you or I going to do about him?" That was true, they had to figure out what they were going to do with the fallen angel. There was a lot of pressure on Sona right now to do the right thing. But the real question in this matter was, what was the right thing? But after more than a few calculations, Sona said, "We'll drop him off at the church for now, then we shall head back to the student council rooms. Am I clear, Issei?" Present. Sona now took in a deep breath. It would seem that not much at all had happened, at least according to Issei. From what he has said, that fallen angel had attacked him, he had retaliated with extreme force, which in this case, caused the park to be lit on fire. Then he had used massive amount of water that he had spewed from his own mouth to put out the fire. From all that Issei had said, Sona was not sure if she wanted to ever set foot in that park in the future. But now getting back to the topic at hand, Sona adjusted her glasses as she said, "So, let me get this straight, you spat out fire onto this guy, too much of it in fact, and then you spat out a large amount of water to stop the fire from spreading." Issei cringed at her explanation and said, "That is a vulgar and inaccurate way of putting across what I did. I formed the fire from the chakra within my body, the expelled a concentrated stream from my mouth." He gave a pause, letting Sona take in what he said before he went on to say, "It is more like breathing out fire. The other jutsu I used converts chakra into water, by which I then also expel from my body. Neither of the two are my saliva, so rest your mind of such primitive and vulgar thoughts." Though he was yet to say it openly, he had just clearly called Sona out on being immature. But Sona was at least mature enough not to get angry about this, well, at least enough not to show that she was angry. But just as she was about to speak, the doors burst open and a red-haired young lady and yelled, "Sona, some madman burnt down the park." This girl seemed to be the girl who Issei had bumped into in front of the ice cream store. No, that was not right. She had bumped into him and spilled his ice cream all over his own shirt. She must be another devil, since she came over and was just reporting this to Sona. Issei could not help but think, if this girl is one of Sona's underlings, then Sona must have some pretty low standards. Keeping calm is an important part of dealing with high-end disasters or any upsets. But no, he kept his mouth shut for the purpose of seeing how Sona reacted to such a situation. He could gauge the relationship this red-haired girl had with Sona, by the reaction Sona gave her. Of which Sona adjusted her glasses, an action she seemed fond of, and said, "I am aware of this, Rias, and I have it under control." The red-haired girl called Rias clearly must not have heard Sona as she said, "We need to find the person responsible for this. It might be that guy you mentioned earlier. We also need to find out who put out the. You should have seen the park, Sona. The park was decimated by that fire." Issei, now Sona, take a deep breath. Clearly her relationship with Rias was not one of master and servant. If it was, then Sona was merciful and suffered fools too often. If it was not, this meant that Rias was not under her direct authority. She replied a bit more sternly, saying, "Rias, I said, I had it under control." The Rias girl now came off to Issei as a complete idiot, due to the fact that Sona had now told her the situation was being dealt with. Yet the Rias girl did not hear it at all. Issei was also pretty sure she was yet to notice him yet. Instead of acknowledging what Sona had said, the Rias girl was too caught up in herself, for she went on to say, "I have Kaneko and Kiba out searching the area for anything out of the ordinary. I am going to." Whatever she was going to say, she did not get to say it because Sona now said in a rather loud voice, "Rias, I have the situation under control." The red-haired girl now looked as if someone had just smacked her on the head rather hard. That, or it had just rained on her parade and Sona's harsh words had done it. The Rias now looked at Sona rather dumbfounded as she asked, "Under control, you have it under control." Sona gave the red-haired girl a nod, which might have been the cause for her to turn and look at Issei. Her reaction to his presence was a little strange to say the least. She jumped back saying, "Eek, Sona, who is this guy? Why is he here? How long has he been here?" Issei, who could not help but wish to cause some confusion and strife here, now stood up. And smiling a most beautiful smile at her, and told her, "Nice to meet you, Rias. I am Issei, Sona's illegitimate big brother. I have come here to see how she is and ask her about a few things." She had made eye contact with Issei the moment she said this, and now whatever she was seeing was what Issei desired her to see. Sona, on the other hand, was a little bit dumbstruck herself hearing this and told Issei, "What, there's no way that she would just fall for that." Issei gave a chuckle and pointed to the Rias, who seemed to be in a daze. Sona looked at her and noticed that Rias was just staring blankly at Issei, not doing anything else. Issei's smile now faded as he turned to Sona and said, "Go up and shake her if you want." A raven-haired girl next to Sona raised her eyebrow at this. She too had looked at Issei. But she had not been looking at his eyes when he put this Rias under the genjutsu. While he could have done so without eye contact, it was good to leave false leads and let some wrongly assume some things. Yet he did. Sona being the one who would go and initiate physical contact with Rias was part of his plan. For the moment it was just luck that kept that raven-haired girl from touching Rias. But now as Sona reluctantly put her hand on Rias's shoulder, the red-haired girl was no longer under the genjutsu. She now reacted to Sona, the way most people would if they had found out that a person they thought they knew had an illegitimate brother that they did not know about. Catching Sona by both shoulders, Rias shook the student council president of Kuo Academy, stating, "Sona, I thought we were friends. Why didn't you tell me you had a half-brother?" Sona now managed to push off the red-haired girl and said, "He's not my half-brother." Rias, who now put her hands back on Sona, shook her again before she said, "That's not what you said to me just before." Issei gave a loud laugh that caused the Rias girl to now look at him and stop shaking Sona. She now looked Issei up and down and then turned to Sona and said, "Why did I think he looked like you? Since when was his hair brown?" Sona now turned and looked at Issei as if wanting an explanation. Issei on his part just gave shrug and lied. "Sorry, I forgot to turn off an automatic defense system I have in place. It's a bad habit that I can't shake off if people are being hysterical." Sona now raised her own eyebrow at that. She was not sure if he was lying or not. She also knew she had no way of compelling him to tell the truth if he did not wish to. But as Sona was just about to respond to that, the raven-haired girl who had entered with Rias spoke. Era, putting people under illusions is a self-defense. I'd love to see what else you can do on me." Her tone was rather suggestive, but Issei picked up on the fact that she was not wanting to fight him. But she did want a front seat or being on the receiving end of whatever he could do. Now Issei had to take on a few want-to-be hotshots before. But those people were not privy to the fact that he could look at you and you'd be in a genjutsu. This young lady was privy to the fact that he had just looked at her red-haired friend and put her under his illusions, as it were. But she, from what she said and the tone in which she said it, suggested to Issei that she did desire to be on the receiving end of his attacks. Also, from the way she had now positioned her body, it was a signal to Issei that she was turned on. Issei was capable of many things with his eyes, but someone eager to see how powerful he was to the point it turned her on, was a first. So now he turned to Sona and told her, I believe that young lady has a problem, the one who entered with the red head. I suggest you get it fixed before she goes and does a foolish act and dies painfully in ecstasy. Rias the redhead now replied to him, Akeno does not have a problem, what type of jerk puts people under illusions just because? Someone was hysterical, I mean come on seriously why would you do that to someone, what are you paranoid or something? Issei now gave a yawn signaling that he was rather tired of being her, even if no one caught onto it. But he did reply to this. Rias encountered her by saying, I put you under an illusion with a look, who knows if you were under one now. In any case knowing that I had done that, then thinking about what else I could do and being turned on about it, yes she does have a problem and a rather big one at that. The Akeno girl seemed to ignore the fact that Issei was saying she was mentally sick said, I wonder if you have a big one downstairs. Issei did catch on to what she was saying but decided it would break up the boredom even further if he acted as if it had gone over his head. So now he replied, yes I do have a rather large one downstairs, you need a rather large basement to train. Rias now chose to comment, Sona where did you get this guy? What Akeno just said flew right over his head, wait hold up, is he the guy who started the fire, is he also the stray devil killer, is he Sona? Issei now turned to her and said, the way you say that, it is as if, that is the only thing that I have killed. I can assure you that I have killed many more things than just that, so no I am not the stray devil killer. Sona who was glad to get off the topic about Akeno now said, yes he is the one Rias, but we have to keep it quiet for now, let me explain. Issei now chose to speak and said, the name's Issei, I was born in this world, taken in by a shinobi from another world, trained in that world, fought in that world, attained power, fought off the mother of the god of shinobi. Came back because mission was done, do work here on the side. Sona now looked at Issei, she was not happy that he just blabbed that out. It did not break his contract, but he did annoy her by doing this. She now sighed and said, well it is as he said, but let me explain. A little later. Soon Rias was sitting down after getting an explanation from Sona, while Sona had explained to Issei just who Rias was. While she did not ask Issei to apologize to Akeno, Rias had but Akeno herself and said it was not required. Within this time Issei saw why Rias had not been told about Issei before, that was due to the fact that she seemed to have a thing with the word shinobi. She also did not seem to be as smart as Sona was or as patient as the Citri clan heiress. She in fact was a clan heiress herself, but unlike Sona, Rias seemed to give Issei the self-entitled vibe. It was not the same as Sasuke for sure, but it was similar to it. Issei could not put his finger on it, but he said that he got the feeling that Rias did not have to work hard for anything in her life so far. Though he now was getting a few very suggestive looks from Akeno whom was winking at him every now and again. The fact that she was doing this clearly pissed off her master Rias whom now got up and said, Akeno we're leaving. Akeno did as she was told, but she did steal a few more glances and winks at Issei whom commented after the two of them had closed the door. Well if I have to say it, I find that she is rather childish and self-entitled, not the total opposite of you, but I get the feeling that you are tad jealous of her. Sona to her credit did not reply to him, if she had he would have pointed out that he could literally feel the jealousy in her voice. Instead Tsubaki spoke, I do believe that you will have to stay with us, at least until this blows over. Issei did raise an eyebrow at that, surely she and Sona both knew that they could not keep him here by force. So it had to be more of a suggestion than an order as it were, it could be a request as well. Sona now gave a very loud sigh as she exhaled loudly and then looked Issei right in the eyes as she said, Issei, I am not sure if you are worth the trouble you caused, to think you are yet to learn why what you did could disrupt the uneasy peace that we currently enjoy. Issei now gave a nod as he said, ah yes, that is why I am actually here, I guess we got a little sidetracked with all that has gone on within this room, also the fact that before I wasn't paying attention to what you were saying. Sona gave a nod to that and then asked Issei, if I explain it to you once more Issei, will you listen to me? Any trace of mischief left Issei's face after she said this and it became rather intense. So intense that Sona had to adjust her glasses to reassure herself that he was not going to kill her with a stare. Answering Sona in a calm yet serious voice Issei said, yes this time, I will listen to you, I will listen to you fully. Sona now motioned to Tsubaki who got a whiteboard and a few whiteboard markers. With those in place Sona now took one of the markers and opened it as she said, alright, shall we begin? Alright I have done some things and I am not sure when I will be done with the next chapter but I hope to get it out soon. Yeah I made Issei dislike Rias and Akeno at first well due to the fact that I personally find that Akeno can be very beautiful, but she is also rather creepy with her S&M crap going on. Note that he dislikes her and does not hate her, same with Rias. Please read and review no flaming thanks. First previous ch4 of 5 next.